Welcome on to the Tortillas and Takes podcast. You are on once again with your boy, Albie Shore. And if I got to say one thing and one thing only, I will say celebrate good times. Come on, because the Texas Tech men's basketball team got nothing but good times going on. We know it's been a little bit since y'all last heard our wonderful voices. When I say our, I mean my other co-host. I'm going to get to it in a little bit. But before that, Texas Tech on a tear right now, right? Winners of 3 straight. Since the last time we talked and we discussed how Tech was, downtrodden or injured, fought Houston tooth and nail, and unfortunately had a loss. We came back, had wins at Kansas, in Lawrence, in Allen Fieldhouse, which is never easy. I don't care how Kansas is, right? Winners against Colorado and at Arizona State. So to talk about these grand victories from our men's basketball program, we got the people's champ himself, Jeremy Gillen. What's up, Jeremy?
That's right. 180, right? You have a disappointing, but okay, it's all right. Like, no big deal. Loss against Houston to finishing the season strong. And we said, if you want to get a competitive seed, the 3's a lock, and we'll talk about that. But if you want to really kind of up the ante, you got to finish strong, because Kansas on the road, always a good win, always good on the resume. It doesn't matter what kind of year they're having. Doesn't matter how weird Coach Self is in the aftermath and releasing like public notices about the program and stuff. Still a good win. And Colorado, God forbid, you got to get that win. And then Arizona State to close out the year at home, especially a good win. So feeling good. We've had a lot going well for the Red Raiders lately, not just in wins and losses, but also in trophies and commendations. So it's an exciting time before the madness of March, before the tournament. And I talk about the Big 12 tournament. I don't care about that, but it is exciting, regardless.
The tournament, the tournament. Not nobody cares what happens in Kansas City. So let's get into that. The Allen Fieldhouse. So one thing I will say is that we've been talking about how Kansas isn't Kansas right now, but they're still a good team, right? Like I get the common sentiment is that, oh, well, Kansas isn't as dominant. They're not the same team that won, however many Big 12 championships in a row. And that's true. But they're still a team that's top 30, 35 in the country. They're still a team that's definitely going to the NCAA tournament, probably going to be there as anywhere between a 7 and 9 seed. Right? Like, they're not some scrub program. Like, I think it's funny because Kansas is trashed this year based off of their normal reputation and based off the fact that they started off the year as a number 1 in the country, right? Top 3 team in the country. So the expectation, including for me, was that Kansas was going to kill it. I want to say Kansas might have been my preseason pick to win the conference. So Kansas, as we know them, yes, this year is one of the worst years. I think it might be the worst Bill Self year ever since he's been at Kansas. But it's still a good team. I was watching Kansas play this past weekend, and they were able to go on and win on senior night, win their last game of the season against Arizona, right? And it was almost like people just forgot, like, oh, because Kansas didn't have a number next to their name, they're just a terrible team. Like, no, they're still 19-10, still a good program. So Texas Tech, this wasn't an easy thing to come into by any means, right? I think this might, and the funny thing is I don't even think we were favored in this game. I know that the ESPN predictor actually had us losing. I'm not sure if we were favored or not, but either way, this wasn't going to be a game that Tech could just. I have it right here. We were not. We were not favored in this game. We were 3.5-point dogs. So either way, I don't want to hear this whole, with their Kansas. We were 3.5-point dogs. Vegas didn't think we were going to win this game, and we still came in. It was a close-knit game for the most part, but then we talked in football about the middle six. We had that similar situation in basketball where we really separated ourselves towards the end of the first half and kept it consistent at the beginning of the second half. And once Jeremy realizes that he's on mute, we'll be able to hear this riveting analysis.
That's right. God, it's such good etiquette, and then I forget that I've done it, and then that's it, right? Top tier analysis. So you always miss the best bits. You subscribe to the Patreon to get the exclusive behind the recordings.
behind the mute.
That's such a. That's kind of a good idea for a podcast name.
That's gold.
Or some kind of special,
gold.
behind the mute. Anyways, what did we talk about? Kansas? Yeah, so Kansas, second time you've beaten the Jayhawks on the road. The second time that you beat them in the Fog. Insane stat. And again, like Albert said, doesn't matter what ranking they have or don't have by their name. Like, this is still a program that prides itself on having one of the toughest home environments in the nation, and has a talent level that's not anything like. Nobody is looking at Kansas and saying, I don't wish I had any of those players, right? It's a talented roster. It's just not been utilized well. And so for Texas Tech to go on the road and say, you know what, I think we can win this, and capitalize on that and play in a manner that was, you know, and this is an interesting game. We can kind of talk about this in a second, but outside of the refereeing, outside of this questionable, outside of just all of the stuff that we tend to talk about when it comes to important Big 12 games, this team really locked in. This team found a way to win. We started to see a change. Now, you were a bit impoverished against Houston because you had a really depleted bench. In this game, you got the key pieces back, and everybody really started to kind of look towards each other to gel, to say, we have got to do this together if we're going to win. And I think you really got a good vibe of that in the first half. Like, it wasn't a blowout, like, oh, we're crushing these guys. It wasn't anything like that, but it was like, I kind of believe that these guys want to win this thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I will say, and I got to correct myself because I talked about how they kept it consistent in the second half. They didn't. We were up 11 at halftime, up 14 early in the second half, and Kansas did make a comeback here, right? Because it was actually kind of crazy, right? Starting the second half, it was probably about as quiet as I'd ever heard Allen Fieldhouse. Like, it was almost like the student section and the fans were just like, oh well, 10th ranked team in the country, we're just not good enough. And I don't think I've ever heard that from the crowd.
Honestly.
Yeah. They felt defeated until Kansas got them back in the game, right? And they were able to tie the game up there with about 13 minutes to go. And it felt tense for me anyways. Like, I'm like, ooh. Like, it's almost like because that crowd was dormant. They got them back in the game, and now the crowd's back. Now you're getting the full force of Allen Fieldhouse right in your face. But there's these guys, I should say, named JT Toppin, Darian Williams, and Chance McMillan, who they were just like, hey, keep cool, guys. We got this. And we wrote out our big three to victory.
Yeah, no doubt. Especially, and this was said I started going looking at houses at the end, which was a terrible decision by me. But listening to the broadcast by Haxton and Level, the foul disparity actually ended up working in Texas Tech's favor towards the end. I can't remember what call it was. Kansas had thrown the ball out of bounds. Insane mistake there at the end. But also a foul. Oh gosh, what was it? But Texas Tech basically had fouls to give for Kansas, because it just like, okay, so it put them in a position of like panic of like, oh, we're not going to be able just to get to the free, like, what's going on here? Yeah. So Kansas kind of put themselves in an awkward bind. And like you said, having Chance McMillan in the rotation, having Darian Williams back in, even though he kind of for a moment had to step out because he like stepped on somebody or whatever. Great showing. Now I will say JT Toppin and Christian Anderson needs many flowers in this game too. But JT Toppin really solidified, I think, what would end up being his Big 12 Player of the Year award here for this game. Because on the road, again, still a team that has a lot of prestige behind its name. On the road, and you're putting up the numbers that you're putting up against a Jayhawks team, and seemingly getting better as the game went on. Incredible performance. And that, I think Toppin really kept the team together. So just a huge showing there late.
Yeah, which is so. I will say I was not expecting Toppin to have a great game in this game, right? Because you're playing. Listen, I don't care what people think about Hunter Dickinson. I mean, he's a jerk. He's a bit of an a-hole. But he's I don't care. He's a good player, right? He's a good player, and you could argue he's an overrated player, and I might take that argument, but he's a good player. I don't care how you look at it. And so Hunter Dickinson, being the big stout guy he is, I actually did expect Toppin to struggle. I give credit to I give credit to CMAC for his decision to have Federico play as many minutes as he did, because I think that took Dickinson off, right? And by being able to take Dickinson off there, it forced KJ Adams, who also had a really good game in this one, had 21 points and 13 rebounds, but it also forced him to play both sides. And towards the end of the game, it felt like KJ Adams was kind of tired, which why wouldn't you be, right? You're trying to put up shots on one end and make JT Toppin work on one end, while on the other end, now you got to play defense. And it was almost like, anything you can do, I can do better. And, well, JT Toppin's kind of the best player in the conference. So, like, eventually you're going to lose that, right? So, stat-wise, if you look at the stats, you're saying, well, KJ Adams had a great game, 21 points, 13 rebounds. He really balled out. But when it was winning time, let me tell you something. Bill Self would trade KJ Adams for JT Toppin, because that's what happened. We just had a better player during that time. And not having Hunter Dickinson there to disrupt Toppin as much, right? The decision to have Federico out there, the decision also to go small at times, forcing Dickinson to come out of the game, right? At times, getting Dickinson forcing Dickinson to come out of the game at times. I thought it was just a really good coaching class, and you don't see Bill Self get out coach very often.
True.
Before this year, you almost never saw it. This year, I don't know if so quick aside, this season kind of reminds me of like Nick Saban's last year when they were good. Alabama was good, but they weren't like Alabama. There were certain things like the O-line wasn't as great as usual. The D-line wasn't as great as usual. They weren't just the Crimson Tide. You know what I'm saying? They weren't really in the conversation for top 4 that much. Still a good team. I think they still went like 9-3 or 10-2 or something like that. But they weren't good. They weren't in the college football playoffs, stuff like that. And then, a couple months later, everybody's like, oh, Nick Saban retired. And like, oh, man, that's crazy. Who would have thought? Bill Self, a good Kansas team. Kansas team. I'm not saying they're bad, but not the same Kansas team that we know. Bill Self, a couple of years ago, I think on this podcast, I said that I thought Bill Self was the best coach in the country. I obviously don't think that anymore.
Yeah.
Is he checked out? He's doing – you mentioned it. After
I was
going to
say, do you think he's stepping away?
Yeah. I kind of do. I kind of do. They were talking. So somebody actually predicted, it was Bomani Jones actually predicted that Nick Saban was going to retire last year, months before he actually did. Right. And he was the only one that I know of that said this is going to be Nick Saban's last year. And I thought when he said it, he was just being hyperbolic, like, oh, Nick Saban's going to retire soon, da-da-da-da. But no, he was like, yeah, I think it's going to be this year. And sure enough, Nick Saban retired. And the reason for that was he felt that just the landscape of college sports has changed so much that these coaches that have been historically successful in the old landscape are going to get tired of it. And he referenced, what's his name from Villanova, Jay Wright from Villanova as a good example, right? Jay Wright just out of the blue retired. And you're like, oh, wow, I didn't expect that. Roy Williams, another one, retired. Now, Roy Williams wasn't necessarily out of the blue. But Roy Williams could have went for a few more years. Jay Wright obviously could have went for many more years. And both of them were like, I'm okay, I can retire. And so he mentioned those two as guys that you're like, these are guys that were pretty successful. And this new regime comes in and was like, it's time for it to go. And Bill Self, I don't know. It's a new regime. And the team is talented, but like Bill Self's old. He's not a young guy. You know, the reason why Kelvin Sampson can do it is because he's been trying to pay players since he was in Oklahoma. So he's like, yes, in my element. Right. But like, I kind of, if it's not this year, I think it'll be next year as his last year. I don't think he's in it anymore. He just does not like he doesn't even look as pissed as he usually is. Like even during watching the game, I'm like, you should be very upset right now. But you're not.
Yeah, checked out.
You're just like,
checked out may be the word.
Yeah. I don't know. But all that to say, Texas Tech wins this game. JT Toppin with 21 points, 5 rebounds. Darren Williams, 14 points, 9 rebounds. CA, Christian Anderson off the bench, the freshman, 15 points, 6 assists in this game. Kerwin Walton played basketball. So, yeah, overall, good game by everybody. In a tough environment, tough game. Only the second time Texas Tech has won in Allen Fieldhouse in our history. And Jeremy, I was trying to look this up to make sure that what I said was correct, right? But this is going to be the first time in Texas Tech's history that we have swept the Jayhawks. 2018 season, the time that we won in Kansas, they got their get back. College game day was in Lubbock, and we ended up losing by 2. Right, it was a top 10 matchup against Kansas. We lost by 2. We didn't get to sweep them. Right, that was also the game that I say that Zaire Smith got drafted because he had 20 in that game. That was when it was like, all right, this guy can jump, he can score. We're drafting him. But yeah, we did not sweep Kansas that year. So this is the first time in Texas Tech history that we have swept Kansas, and incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Would you call it a sweep? You only got them once.
We won. You got them twice.
No. You only played Kansas once this year.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so now I tell you. Scratch everything.
We beat them.
We beat them. Yeah, we beat them. I guess, well, technically, you could argue this is the first time we haven't lost to Kansas in a season.
Hey, first season we've not lost to Kansas.
It's not a sweep. You're right. My bad. It's not a sweep. I got ahead of myself. It is not a sweep. Next year.
If we played them again,
I was excited, man. That's true. That is facts. But yeah. So from that game, Texas Tech has 2 more games to play. We talked about this last week as far as how after that Kansas game, how important it's going to be as we play Colorado and play at Arizona State. All right, senior night against Colorado at Arizona State. Jeremy, let me tell you something. Texas Tech teams that I know and love, that we all know and love, they drop these games. We went through a whole last episode. We went through a whole thing where I had a whole soapbox of how many times we've been top 10 ranked and just lost. Right, but that same 2018 season, we went on a 4-game losing streak. We actually on 2 separate occasions we lost at least 3 games in a 4-game span. Right, that was the season that went to the Elite Eight. Right, so I'm not saying that by doing so it's terrible. I mean, even that season that we went to the national championship game, we ended up going on a 3-game losing streak, losing to teams like Kansas State and Baylor in that season, right? Good teams, but still dropping games we didn't need to drop. We lost to West Virginia in the first round of the Big 12 tournament, right? Like that's, this is just not games. We're used to dropping games. We're like, how the hell did that happen? Right? I think when we lost to TCU earlier this year, a lot of people kind of felt like, oh, well, this is Tech. Now, that being said, that's a game, the TCU game, I think that was another game where if we were favored, we were barely favored. Like that wasn't even a game necessarily we were supposed to win. But I would say that we're used to dropping these games. Like in our season or in our history, dropping a game like this against these 2 teams are very cognizant, like normal.
Yeah.
And we played Colorado. The game was close early on. Then it wasn't for most of the rest. Right? Like it was a 5-point game with like 7 minutes to go. And then Tech was like, you know what? Why are we playing with our food? Let's get up out of here. And they just beat them like they stole something. This is a Colorado team that's not very good. I will say this, and I'm talking about this game. I in no way felt that Tech was going to lose this game, ever, even before the game. I did think there was a chance Tech could make this way closer than it needed to be and be in a dogfight against a team they had no business being in a dogfight in. And that's what I was worried about. And Tech took that away after the first 12 minutes. They were like, okay, let's stop this nonsense and let's go and kick the crap out of this team like we're supposed to.
Yeah. Yeah, what do you say? Simple game, good mechanics. Texas Tech was flying around, good basketball. I mean, you had very fluid offense, which I think is what you really want here late in the season. All the guys kind of gelling together. The Elijah Hawkins to Chance McMillan to the, kicked it out to whoever it was for the 3. It was like, okay, pack it up, Colorado. Pack it up.
Yeah, it was awesome.
All right, we're playing some prime Lakers, what's going on here. But yeah, man, Colorado game. I went to that one. General admission tickets for $12, so I said yes, sir. It was great, and it was fun to watch and give you a lot of. I think insurance is a good way to put it because you talked about it. Because I think something we're so used to is a Texas Tech having a big win, and then playing somebody and then letting them hang around when they have no business. And it's like, it makes me feel uncomfortable. But this Texas Tech team really finds a way to hit a groove and play off of each other. And it was a thing of beauty. Colorado game, thing of beauty. Dub.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think this is one of those games where you're playing a bad team that's just ready to end their season and move on to the offseason. And you were just able to get the victory. And that's all that, and not just a victory, but an easy victory, a stress-free victory, a Jack Francis victory, right?
That's right.
I saw somebody on Twitter. I think it might have been words are escaping me, bro. But they're calling Rob Bro. Yeah, sorry. They're calling Jack Francis the closer.
Well, he's never lost a game.
So when he's never lost a game when he plays. I think somebody said we're 15-0 when he plays. All right, that means we have 15 blowouts. That's good. But yeah, you put the closer in, then we're good to go. You know what I mean? So
you don't want to see Jack Francis coming on the court.
You don't want to see him. Yeah, listen. One person you don't want to see. Oh no, that's Jack Francis music.
Yeah.
Anybody with Jack Francis? No, we still have time.
We're cooked.
But yeah. So JT top in this game, 30 points, 14 rebounds. Really, I mean, you say that was a game against Kansas might have won him Conference Player of the Year. I think this game definitely solidified it. Like, man, he's really that dude, especially when you got nobody to guard him, right? Which, let me tell you something. Banco Dak, you don't have the facilities, my boy. You don't have the facilities. He was struggling against Toppin in this game. McMillan found his stroke again. Found his stroke, 15 points, hitting 3 or 4 from 3. Kerwin Walton did more than just run around. He had 4 threes in this game, 12 points. So good on him for that one. And Darren Williams, like I failed to mention this against Kansas, but you talked about him rolling his ankle, which, my God, my heart stopped. But that ankle looked fine and healthy in this game. And able to get him up and down the court as well. And again, CA once again off the bench, 12 points. So, but actually even better than CA off the bench, 8 points from Kevin Overton, KO with 8 points as well. 8 points, 3 rebounds, and 4 fouls, doing what he does best defensively. So from there, Texas Tech, one more game to end the season. That was senior night, right? So I do want to say, good on the seniors there, but they had one more game to play at Arizona State. And this was actually the game that I thought, okay, I didn't think we would lose against Colorado, worst team in the conference, at home, senior night. That wasn't going to happen. I did think that this game against Arizona State was one that I was like, if there's a game we're going to drop, it could be Arizona State, right? Arizona State is the second worst team in the conference, but this is their senior night. This is Tech just had laid an egg against, or not laid an egg, but just played Colorado, who is an egg themselves. And you could be looking ahead to Kansas City. You could be looking ahead to the tournament, right? And seeding, and Lenardi has us placed here. Some people have us placed here, and overlooking, we got to take this trip to Tempe real quick, and really overlooking this Arizona State team, no matter how bad they are. And so this was actually the game that I thought, if there's a game we're going to drop, it could be this one, right? And again, we didn't play with our food for 12 minutes. We played our food for a whole first half. Like, the entire first half was close. Entire first half was back and forth. And this was a game that I was like, ooh, this is the one. We're looking ahead of that 2 seed. You lose this, ain't no 2 seed. You lose this, that's gone. That's gone, pack it up. It's just a matter of what region. Right. And so, but in this second half, again, I think this Tech team is a little bit different than the ones we know in the past, where they turn it on. I don't know. I'll say this, not even, I don't know. I've never seen a Tech team offensively that can turn it on like this one can. A team that can score 36 points in the first half and then just wake up and score 49 in the second. And they just turn it on. Right. They were up by 5 with 15 minutes to go. And they said, you know what? How about we go on a 43-20 run? Right?
Why not?
Hey, why not, guys? Y'all want to just do that real quick? It'd be fun. And that's what they did. It was this team offensively is just insane.
It's a good way to put it. And I think the Arizona State game, I feel for Arizona State because they have had such a disappointing season for being a team that has played a lot of good teams really well. They just haven't been able to close it out. Like they took Arizona, the game before overtime, and just didn't get their buckets late. And we were familiar with that, earlier in the season when we went to double or triple overtime, whatever it was, and we edged them out. And it was like, wow, that was close. This one we should have won, so I'm glad we won, but that was close. But basically, Grant McCasland said, "Yeah, I don't want to do that again. So we're gonna blow these guys out of the water, and we're gonna play good defense." So by the time that Arizona State, I don't know, they heard Jack Francis' music and it was over, right? It's just like, but it was a great game in Tempe to go again, going on the road. Being able to do this and stay consistent on the road, like these are really good things to see right before the NCAA tournament, because you're about to go on the road and be on the road, and that's it, right? It's a neutral site, whatever they want to say it is, but like you're on the road, and so you have got to be able to perform at the same level. And they say defense travels, and like, yeah, there's some element to that, but we've had a defensive-minded team that got in trouble in the national championship game because they couldn't score. They didn't travel, at the end. And it was like, if this has been probably, in my experience, the most complete Texas Tech basketball team that, like you said, a good illustration was that JT Toppin on what's his name from Colorado, basically being able
Dak?
to no, not Dak. Sorry, what were we talking about before? Anyways, being able to go and score, but then getting back and playing defense, right? McCasland, I mean, if somebody gets scored on, it's usually Kerwin Walton. But when they have a three and they go down and they get like bucketed, Grant McCasland's pissed. He's like, "Are you joking me? Like, you've got to be kidding! Like, you had that great moment and you screwed it up. It's all over. Like, so either." You got to play both ways. And I think that kind of mentality is why a lot of people are really high on Texas Tech right now, looking at our team that, like, this is a team that could make a deep run. This could be a Final Four team because they're showing an ability to do what they do both at home and on the road. And so it was really good to see us close out the season like that. 3 wins, 3 big wins in their own special way. Right here, and now it's a question of, and I think back to the St. Joe game, like, no way we're going to be debating between are we going to get a 2 seed or not. No way.
That's crazy. I will say this Arizona State game, biggest blowout of the year for the Sun Devils. Largest margin of defeat for them, 28 points here in this game. JT Toppin at 25 points, 11 rebounds. Kerwin Walton also getting more than cardio, 11 points in this game, 9.6 assists for McMillie, 21 points off the bench for CA, and then 8 points, 5 rebounds off the bench for Kevin Overton. So, yeah, definitely a great game there. And Jack Francis, once again. The Francis Green show. Corbin Green not getting a lot of love. He also appeared in both the last 2 games as well. So, yeah. So, yeah, there you go. So I will say, we talked about the beginning of the season, right? At the beginning of the season, if y'all go back to the old episodes, feel free to call me out and say I stink and all this other stuff. But at the beginning of the season, I did think the team was a little overhyped because I'm watching this team as we play Bethune-Cookman, Northwestern State, right? Which we struggled with Northwestern State for a little bit. I'm like, okay, we lose to St. Joe's, and not a very good St. Joe's team either, by the way. And I'm like, this team that everybody's telling me is so great and they're expecting so much, I'm not seeing it, right? I don't see it so far, right? And then, and we lose to A&M. Now, I will say the A&M loss was one that I could live with because A&M is a good team. But the St. Joe's, but I'm looking at the season and I don't see it. Let me lose to UCF. And that's when I'm like, you know what? Finally, gloves are off. This team is not as good as y'all think. It is tournament or bust. We will see how they look. And since that UCF game, something clicked. Since that UCF game, there has not been bad performances There's not been a Northwestern State game. There's not been a St. Joe's game. There's not been a DePaul game. That was another game we played terribly. There's not been an A&M game. There's not been a UCF game. We have played actually, I take that back. There's only been one, and that's that game at TCU where we were, and I looked it up, we were 7-point favorites in that game. We ended up losing that one. And I mentioned in that game could be a blessing because we could have woken up every other game. And we have. I mean, since that game, we've played 5 games. 3 of them have been impressive wins, or 4 of them have been impressive wins, sorry. The only one that's been a loss is a Houston game where you're without 2 of your 3 best players, and you still played valiantly, right? I wouldn't consider that a bad loss at all, actually. Probably our quote-unquote best loss. But yeah, so I do think that this team is one. I will say this, watching this team the last 3 games, I'm like, this is a team that can win a national championship.
Yeah.
They have the makings for it. This is a team that can. I'm not saying they will, but this is a team that has everything you need for a national championship run. You have the guard play, right? Which today you got to have the guard play. They have the guard play. They have the defense in order to do it, right? They have the sharp shooting and able to do it in order to do it, and they have the star, the NBA guy, and able to do it in order to do it, right? Technically, they got 2 of them if you count Darren Williams, who I was mentioning before is actually a higher prospect, surprisingly, than Toppin is right now, which I do think is going to change here soon. But either way, 2 guys that are being looked at on NBA radars. And so, and a 3rd guy, Christian Anderson, that I think will be looked at on NBA radars sooner rather than later. And so, it's this team has the makings of it. I look at some of these games. I was watching Duke the other day, and I'm like, you know what, Duke, you have a good team, but you ain't been battle tested at all. Yeah. The ACC is about as bad as I've ever seen it. We have not seen Duke battle tested in the last 2 months. They've been able to just steamroll their way through the ACC because the ACC is awful. So Duke is no different than Gonzaga all those years in the WCC. I have no idea how good they're going to be, right? And so I saw Auburn lose this past week, right? Alabama's going to be a 2 seed most likely. They're going to be a 1 seed, right? Back-to-back losses. And so we play the one team. So here's the thing: the one team that you could argue is probably the team that is battle tested, a team that has an incredulous amount of wins, right? A team that has been winning, is streaky, is winning games lately. So hot, right? A team that has the guard play, has the defense, has the star, has it all. Is Houston, and we beat them once without our best player, and came down to the wire without 2 of our 3 best players. So if that's the team that has the best shot, other than Auburn. I still think Auburn's the best team in the country. But if that's the team that has one of the best shots to win the national championship, and that's the team that if I'm watching us play them twice, Houston will lock the better team between the 2. Like if you had to just guess who you think the better team is without knowing anything else, you would say, oh, well, Texas Tech, the team that is split the season series and not had Exton Russell the whole time, right? So like this team has all the makings. And I don't think I think I've only said that about one other team since I've been a radio. So it's very interesting to see what this team is capable of as we move forward, for sure. So let's talk about a little bit about their seeding. You mentioned it before. The 3 seed seems to be a lock, right? Which is funny because 2 weeks ago we thought, we can get a 3 seed. I don't know. Now we're saying 3 seed seems to be a lock from everything we're seeing. Right? Everybody has us at least at a 3. Goodman, Lenardi, CBS. Everybody has us at least at a 3. But 2 is starting to come up. That 2 seed. There seems to be rumblings about who will get the last 2 seed. Jeremy, do you think Texas Tech is in prime position for that 2 seed?
I think you are. I think you've gotten there by the amount of good quad 1 wins that you've had, especially on the road. Houston win on the road carries a lot of weight, buddy. Let me tell you, especially with the context of like losing your head coach and your best player, and still winning, right? And so I think that there's a lot of weight to that, and that's going to come down to, how much value do these people put into that? The selection committee put into that, but I think the 2 is a lot more feasible than I was expecting before Kansas. even after the Kansas win, I was still kind of hesitant. Like, okay, we're definitely a 3, but I don't see how we get to a 2. But the fact that people have lost, like Iowa State, like Arizona,
Yeah.
it's been like, I don't know. We're kind of getting lucky with all these other teams losing. Alabama, like it's like I don't know. Like we may be able to sneak in there.
So our ranking, or kind of let's look at our resume right now. So Texas Tech is a team 24-7 on the season, or 8-2 on the road, which is really good. Or 9-3 away from home, or 9-4 away from home, which is really good. 8-4 quad 1 wins, 4-2 quad 2, 6-1 quad 3, and then 6-0 quad 4s. Right, really good roster. I would say right now in the tournament, Duke, Auburn, and Houston locks for 1 seed. That's no question. Locks for a
win the
1
conference.
seed.
Yeah.
The Final Four is a little bit up in the air, but I would say Florida is most likely going to get that last 1 seed. It could go to Alabama. Just had a huge win against Auburn, so it could go to them. Could go to Tennessee. I think Iowa State had a shot at it, but now that's gone. Right. 2 weeks ago they had a shot at it, not anymore. And so, but I think Florida's most likely going to get the last 1 seed. Right. So for the 2 seeds, that means that you leave yourself Tennessee and Alabama, which I think are pretty sold on that 2 seed. But then you have some other ones, right? Iowa State losing is huge for the Red Raiders. It is really big for the Red Raiders. I think that actually, so our net ranking right now is 7th, ahead of Iowa State, ahead of Michigan State, who's another team that I think right now is looking at a 2 seed, ahead of Gonzaga. And so if you're looking at that and you say, okay, well, I got Tennessee as a 2, Alabama as a 2, and let's say Michigan State as a 2, and you're trying to decide between Tech, Gonzaga, and Iowa State, you say, well, Tech has a higher net. They have, more quad 1 wins than both. Gonzaga's a 2 seed is just silly to me. But, I do think that Iowa State double overtime win may, if we don't get the 2 seed, that is what is going to, kill us more than anything, which would be unfortunate because it was a double overtime loss. But yeah, no, as I look at it, I think if I had to bet right now, if Tech's going to be a 2 or 3, I actually do think Tech is more likely to be a 2 than a 3 seed. I think their resume shows them as a 2 seed. And I think if we don't become a 2 seed, it's because Iowa State stole it from us based off of that game. I'd be shocked if neither one of us are a 2 seed. If Texas Tech and Iowa State are neither of them are 2 seed, that would be the most surprising thing out of any of them. Oh, and one team I did forget to mention is also St. John's. St. John's is also there as a potential 2 seed as well. But again, that's another one that I don't really understand that one. St. John's is a great story. They're in New York. They're on TV a lot, so you may say something about them. But they're a team that is lower than A&M when it comes to net ranking. They're 4-4 on quad 1 wins. They're ranked 17th in net. So if net is supposed to be the key thing you look at, it's really not a question.
Yeah, they're probably sitting prettier on the 3 line for sure. Between us two, if it was like St. John's or Texas Tech, I'm like, yeah, Texas Tech makes more sense. Metrics wise, and
I think
and everything.
If it's between us and Iowa State, that game's gonna carry some weight. Like I'm thinking of myself in the committee. I'm gonna say, how can we give? Yeah, if those are the final 2, like if I'm on the committee, I'm like, well, how can we give it to this team if they lost to them? At home.
That's right. It makes it difficult.
You know what I mean? So like, it makes it difficult. So if Tech is a 3 seed because Iowa State becomes a 2, I won't even trip. I'd be like, oh well, right? Like I wouldn't now. But if St. John's is, if Gonzaga is, then I'd be like, nah, what the hell, man? Don't even come on.
Yeah,
like that's when I would say get the hell out of here. Right. And so but we'll see. We'll see what happens there. My prediction is that we get the 2 seed. Just because I think we're there.
First time in history.
Would be the first time in Texas Tech history we've gotten a 2 seed. So Jeremy Gillen, is this the greatest regular season men's basketball team in Texas Tech history?
Without winning a conference championship? Oh man.
No, the conference championship doesn't matter. Regular season only.
Oh, okay.
Do it.
You told me to think about it, and I still am
Do it.
like, because you want to think about the 2019 team, but that team had many struggles too. That team had a lot, I
Yeah.
think, harder struggles. Uh,
So
that
I'll
team lost to
I'll
teams
give
they
you
should not
some.
have lost. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll give you some candidates, right? So there are some candidates for this. So right, so you have the 1976 team. So the 1976 team, boy, you know, everybody loves the 1976 team. Am I right?
Boy,
Um,
howdy.
this is a team, boy, howdy, right? This is honestly, this is probably the first great Texas Tech team. This is, you know, there we go. Taught by or coached by Gerald Myers. This was a team that ended up going to the Sweet 16, furthest or tied for the furthest that we had ever been in Texas Tech history. This is a team, especially when we were new to the Southwest Conference, was really big, and Gerald really kind of solidified Gerald Myers as that guy, and already is the greatest coach in Texas Tech history. Right. So there's that. You also have the 1954 team. Shout out to Polk Robinson. Who went 11-1 in the Border Conference. Really good team, 20-5 overall. One of the best win percentages in Texas Tech history. All right, now that I bored you with the oldies, we do have the 1996 team, last year in the Southwest Conference, undefeated in conference play. This is the team with the NBA players in Tony Battie and Darvin Ham and Corey Carr, like Jason Sasser. Like this is that 96 team has been the bar that Texas Tech has been held to for forever, right? And that team is just a hell of a team, right? So there's 96, and 96 is probably going to get a lot of people's votes. There's a 2018 team, of course. Now the 2018 team is the team. No, real quick, the 96 team did lose in the Sweet 16. There is the 2018 team. So this is a team, if you remember, second year under Beard. This was a team that this was Zaire Smith's first year. Freshman year, Jarrett Culver's freshman year, but also this team was really headlined by the guys that had been through the mud and kind of led us from the misery we were in before and grew through the tubby years and ended with Chris Beard, right? With Keenan Evans, with Davide Moretti, with our guy Norense Odiase, right? Brandon Francis on this team. Fun team in 2018. They went to the Elite Eight and lost to Villanova, who nobody was beating Villanova that year. Actually, we were the closest. I think we only lost by less than 20, which is more than anybody else could say that year in the tournament. So, and then of course, the 2019 team, the team that went to the national championship game, but again, this is for regular season only. But that 2019 team, led by Jarrett Culver, led by Brandon Francis, Davide Moretti, all those guys, and Norense. That 2019 team, however, did break Kansas's streak of conference championship game. They shared a conference championship, which was our first one since the 96 team in the Southwest Conference. And this team was a team that, was very strong. And this is the only other team that I would argue, outside of course, the 96 team, that didn't have any bad losses, right, in the regular in conference play, right? Not a lot of bad, even the losses they lost to unranked teams, with games where you're like, okay, well, this actually makes some sense. It was a game like Kansas State ended up also sharing the conference championship with us that year. They just weren't ranked at the time. Iowa State was still a good team that year as well. So that was a team 27-10, 11-7. Or no, sorry, that was 2018. 2019 team was 31-7, 14-4 in conference. This was a team that got to as high as 9th in the AP poll. Really good team. And then also an honorable mention team that I don't think a lot of people have thought of because it's still pretty new. The 2022 team, man, is so much better than people give them credit for, right? I think because 2019 isn't too far away, and that was the Mark Adams year, and we just think of that team as season more as a man, did it feel good to be this good still, right? Because people left us for dead after Chris Beard left. But take all the other stuff away from that 2022 team, still a really good team at its core. 27-10 overall, as high as 12th ranking in the AP poll, 12-6 in the Big 12, finished third in the Big 12, only 2 games out of a share of the Big 12 title. And that's of course a team that had forever known as, having Kevin O'Banner on the team, having Bryson Williams. That was Bryson Williams, Adonis Arms, like these type of star guys that we had. Kevin McCullough Jr. was on that team, Terrence Shannon Jr. So, I mean, that team alone has, 5 players that play G League level ball or higher, right? So hell of a team right there. So and Malik Wilson, who's now in Houston, but killing it over with the Cougs, and was still a contributor here over at Tech 2 at the time. So that's 6 other options I give you, Jeremy. Is this team better than all 6?
God. The thing is, man, that's what sucks is that 96 team, you only lose 2 games all year. One was I looked at it as like Eastern Michigan or whatever, which was weird. And the next one was Georgetown in the Sweet 16 when they were ranked 4th. But
they also real quick at the same time, 10 years from now, people will be saying that about this team in St. Joseph's. So
yeah, they're like,
people will be like, how does this team lose to St. Joe's?
You are correct, sir. But the conference looked a lot different, obviously, back in those days. And so I think basketball-wise, you may have had an easier probably if some weird nerd out there could do comparative metrics between comparable teams then and now, I do think this team has an edge on 96 in terms of quality of wins. When it comes to 2019 and breaking Kansas's streak, yes, that was big. It would be bigger if we were able to get the outright conference championship, in my mind. Now, you didn't get that here, right? But Houston is a class of its own for sure. And you still went 1 for 1 with
Houston's them. Better than any team. Houston's better than any other team in the Big 12 that year or in the Southwest Conference in 96. So, yeah.
Correct. And you split the series with them, and you almost got a win, even though you had a 6-man rotation. I don't know, man. This might be a really good Texas Tech year. It might be. But I can't say it is until I see what they do.
Boo!
If we go out, so here's the thing. Here's where I'm hung up. If you go out in the first round, are you still feeling as confident about this season?
Regular season. You got to stick it to the regular season.
Okay.
You got to stick it to the regular season because that 1950.
You're right.
They lost in the first round.
You're right. Well, if it's regular season, I like the 29. I like this team the best. This team would go. This team would beat either. Yes. This team would beat either of those 2 teams. I think.
Wow.
For sure. Yeah.
Wow. So that's actually saying a lot.
Better two-way.
This would be the only team that ever
players.
Well, this would be the first team that ever got a 2 seed. So I don't think you're off it. Like obviously, this is you're already going to be accomplishing something that's never been done before. I will say, looking at the 96 team, I don't think the 96 team actually played a ranked team all year.
That's what I'm saying. It's like hard to judge that team.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, there's a reason why a team that goes into the NCAA tournament sitting in a quote unquote major conference, sitting at 25-1, right? 28-1 because they won the Southwest Conference tournament. Would be a 3 seed, right? They were 7th in the AP poll, and they were given a 3 seed. Exactly. So like it's and then they lost where they were supposed to lose in the Sweet 16 to Georgetown. So yeah, I don't necessarily think you're wrong. I will push back on you though. I do think the 2019 team is better because this is the only 2019 team is the only team that. Well, one, I think their defense is just amazing, and they did have the star in Jarrett Culver. They're also the only team. They're the only team that, again, like I mentioned, they don't have a St. Joe's or an Eastern Michigan on their schedule. They don't have a blemish, right? Like the worst loss that they have on in that season was losing at home to Iowa State. Is the worst loss that season. Right. And mind you, every single team they lost to that year, finished the year. Actually, not take that back. With the exception of Baylor, finished the year ranked. Iowa State finished the year ranked. Kansas State finished the year ranked. Kansas finished the year ranked. West Virginia doesn't count because it's in the Big 12 tournament. And then Duke finished the year ranked. Like every other team finished the year ranked. So they don't have So that's why I look at that team with again, we're actually even West Virginia one again. That's after the regular season, so they don't have a St. Joe's on their season. They don't have that early season or just trying to get it right type of thing. So I'm gonna still give it to 20, and they won a championship. So I'll give it to 2019. 2019. I still think that's the greatest season of ever. But I do agree with you that this team, man, the potential is there. I have never felt as close to a potential national championship than I do right now. I didn't even feel like this in 2019.
Yeah,
like 2019, going into the tournament, I was like, man, it's a really good team. But I still didn't look at this team like, oh, this is the national championship level team. I was like, I think they could get it done. I did. I did think they could get it done. This is the only other team that I did think they have the makings of what it takes to get there. Right, so just that team and this team, the only two teams I've ever felt like Texas Tech has what it takes to get there. But at the same time, or it maybe 2022, I said maybe. Like 2022, I'm like, let's see how the ball bounces. But 2019 and this team are the only two teams I said they have all that it takes to get there. But 2019, that regular season was just, and then they ended the regular season on a freaking tear. What's this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 game winning streak. So yeah, I got to give it to 2019 at the same time. So there's that. So real quick, because we're running a little bit late on the runtime here, but I do got to say, so JT Toppin wins Conference Player of the Year, and he wins Newcomer of the Year, which that was, I mean, they might have well renamed the award to him at that point. Like that was obvious that he was going to win. What are you going to give it to? VJ Edgecombe? Get out of here, right? So he was always going to win Newcomer of the Year. Player of the Year was one I wasn't sure. I wasn't too sure, right? You could, because there's some other players like Keyshawn Gilbert was really good this year. Richie Saunders was really good from BYU. Was really good this year. But I do think it ended up coming to, if you're not giving it to JT Toppin, Houston doesn't have anybody that just stood out as the guy, right? There wasn't LJ Cryer didn't stand out as the guy. Jawan Robertson didn't stand out as like the guy of the conference. So okay, so it wasn't Houston. Who do you go to? Number 2, Texas Tech. Do they have a guy? Oh man, that JT Toppin's crazy. And then the job's done. Like you don't have to vote for anybody else, right? So
that's right.
I think that him being Conference Player of the Year makes a lot of sense. We'll find out about All-Americans. A lot of media members are saying that he's going to be a first-team All-American, which will make him the second ever Texas Tech Red Raider to be first-team All-American for men's basketball. Only other one was Andre Emmett, RIP. So another question, Jeremy, is JT Toppin having the greatest season ever for a Red Raider?
It doesn't really.
T, Jared Culver, Keenan Evans, Andre Emmett.
I would. I don't want to answer that one. That one's too deep. There's too many options to sit through. He's certainly collecting the awards. He's certainly collecting the awards. Yeah,
I still think Jared Culver got robbed getting second-team All-American, but
Jared Culver did get robbed, much like Chance McMillan got robbed. Yes.
Yeah. And so I will say, speaking of conference first team, so Chance McMillan did get robbed of all Big 12 first team. You are correct there. And I do hate this whole everybody wins, let's put 10 players on the first team thing. I think that's dumb, right? Like, I don't like that at all. I don't like that at all. Now, you could argue that if that wasn't the case, then Chance McMillan would have made third team and not second team, but I digress. Either way, I still don't like the whole 10 players on first team thing. But it did get JT Toppin and Darian Williams getting first team. I think if they did this the way I would like it, you would end up seeing JT Toppin on all Big 12 first team. Darian Williams likely would have been pushed down to second team, and then McMillan third team, which is fine, if you ask me.
Mm-hmm.
That's all fine. Christian Anderson didn't make the all freshman team this year. Right. And then, of course, JT Toppin making the all newcomer team, which, yeah, obviously. So yeah. Anything else you want to say? Anything else? Yeah, sorry. The Big 12 tournament comes up this week. Really not much to preview. I think we get that bye because we're the number 2 seed, so that's awesome. But what do you expect from Texas Tech in Kansas City?
It's nice that you get the bye. I have no idea. We've joked about it in the past that the Big 12 tournament's kind of a waste of time. That like just get the loss early, take the Kansas route, just get the loss early and rest up for the tournament. Um, but I do wonder if there's an urgency when we talk about seeding. Like if you win that quarterfinal and you win the semi, if you make it to the final against Houston, if you make it there, you're a 2 seed in my mind because you've beaten some good, better Big 12 teams again on a neutral site, and it's like, okay, Texas Tech still got the momentum. Give them the 2. So I think that'll be kind of on their mind. And I also don't take Coach McCasland for somebody who just wants to roll over in the Big 12 tournament.
Yeah, I don't either. I do think if you get to the semis, so it's just one win, right? You'll be okay, right? I do think that with the and we've talked about this before. I really don't know how much they take this into account as far as conference tournaments.
It's hard to say.
During the beard days, we used to lose really early on, so we could rest up, and that's fine. I mean, I talk about the 2019 team. They lost first round to a no-name West Virginia team because they just didn't care. But with this, we'd be in the quarterfinals. We would be playing. Our first game would be we play either Baylor, Kansas State, or Arizona State. I think it's safe to say it wouldn't be Arizona State. So either Baylor or Kansas State, we'd be playing in that one. If it is Baylor, that's a team that is – I will say this. If it's Baylor, that's going to be a dogfight because that is a team that's fighting for their bubble life. Baylor needs every win they can get. And for Baylor, if they were to pull off a situation where they beat Texas Tech in the quarterfinals, that may be what they need to get in the tournament. So, that if it's Baylor, it's going to be a dogfight, right? I take it back. I'd argue any of them, right? Because if you're Baylor or Kansas State's out. They're not going to make the tournament. So this is their only path to making the tournament. Kansas State might even need a couple wins to get to the NIT if they were willing to accept that one, right? Baylor, they have a small chance at the at-large. Well, not a small chance. The one that got to win the second round. A first-round exit or the first entry exit for Baylor, they're likely out. They got to at the very least beat K-State. And then a win against Tech might even be enough to get them in, right? So you're going to have a hungry team in that first game. But I think for Tech, if you're able to get that victory, you might be able to seal that one. If you get to the championship game, I'd be willing to stamp it and say you're a second seed. So, and then I would say this: what if you got that championship game against Houston, right? Let me tell you something. Twitter might explode. The way the Cougs hate us, and the way that they're starting to finally
it's the
be
Super
a valiant
Bowl.
opponent. Yeah, that's right. Well, this one actually would be some level of a championship here. Let me tell you something. If we beat Houston, they're not going to. They're going to hate us. They already hate us, but they're going to hate us so much more. They ain't going to hear the end of it.
That's right.
So yeah. Only other thing I'll say about the Big 12 Championship Tournament, my 20-year crusade that the Big 12 tournament should be rotated. What's funny? I finally came to an understanding of like, you know what? Leave the Big 12 tournament in Kansas City. It is what it is. I will never get my way with this. Until the people from the Pac came over and were like, why the hell are we having this tournament in Kansas effing City?
Yeah.
So now they're like, let's put it in Vegas, which I get why Vegas is an attractive area and city for it. I get it. But nah. This doesn't make sense.
So far out there, man. It's so far out there for everybody.
It's so far out there. They're not going to care about it. It's going to be empty conference tournaments. Like Kansas, the Big 12 tournament gives you the true gravitas of what the Big 12 tournament's supposed to be in Kansas City. It's packed. It's usually packed. Now, mind you, it's usually packed because Kansas State, Iowa State, or Kansas in the semifinals and the finals. But either way, it's people that love basketball. They're going to be there. And I've never had a problem with Kansas City as a city hosting it. My problem has always been that it is an adherent advantage to 3 schools more than anybody else. It's been my only problem with the Big 12 tournament, right? If you're a Tech fan, if you're a Houston fan, if you're a TCU fan, if you're a Arizona fan, you're not as likely to make the trip out to Kansas City as those 3 schools. So that's been my only problem this entire time. And I would love it if it were, but to certain people's points, like Scott Wildcat and Levi from Wild Rat Nat Alliance, all these guys, is that they tried it. They did try it. Dallas, it was a stinker. I do think Oklahoma City, because when they did it in Oklahoma City before, it was before the Thunders, before the state of Oklahoma actually cared about the sport of basketball. I do think if they had it in Oklahoma City, that it would be exciting again. That's where I've been lobbying for it to be, because I think that's more essential. That's more of a central location. And so that's where I would like it to be. But yeah, it's funny. I finally come to the conclusion that it would always be in Kansas City, and then now the topics come up again. Any thoughts there?
Once again, we're back in the cyclical discussion of why not Las Vegas. And I think the best argument against Las Vegas that I've seen is, if your reasoning behind it is what does the city offer me outside of the tournament, then you don't want to go to the tournament. You just want to go to Vegas. Yeah. Like, you want an excuse to go to Vegas. And you know what, buddy? Go to Vegas. Who cares? But I think to preserve some of that, gravitas, as you say, having it in more central locations is smart. I like Oklahoma City as an idea. I like the idea of rotating it. So Kansas City, Oklahoma City, and then find yourself a third one. Maybe you punt it out to somewhere in Colorado, so that maybe those Pac-12 teams feel like there's something a little bit more close, but you're still staying semi in the mid section of the USA. I don't know, but I think there's some momentum to expanding it to different cities, but I don't think Las Vegas should ever be on that list. No, because it's way too far and way too much of an inconvenience for the teams that have been here the longest, right? It's so like, you never West Virginia fans are gonna be like, I gotta go all the way out there, change 2 time zones, and then come back when we lose in the first round. I don't think so. So, yeah, there's you lose a lot of. I think that there should be like a happy medium. Some Pac-12 fans, some dead conference fans will not be satisfied unless they get to go gamble away because they don't actually care about basketball. But all the schools that care about basketball that I've seen really don't seem to care that it's in Kansas City. Because at the end of the day, it's like most Big 12 teams, the Big 12 tournament's really cool. I think it's more of like a social event. Hey, here's the Basketball Hall of Fame city. We're all out here having a good time. There's no like ragamarole. Nobody's throwing batteries. Like it's not hateful. It's just a bunch of people going and getting drunk in Kansas City, supporting the local economy, and then going home when their team loses, because most of the teams there are focused on the big tournament. So I don't know. I'm not opposed. I would like to see it switch around, but I want to see it switch around to small cities that can use that kind of boost,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think as long as Kansas City is doing the Big 12, the service that it provides, which they have done, there's really no need for them to change it. And again, I would love for them to change it because I've been advocating it for a long time. But I get it. I get why it stays there. And if we don't like it, we should win more. So, speaking of teams that should win more, the Texas Tech Lady Raiders. So we got to get out of here pretty soon. For those that care about baseball, MLB is coming up. Focus on your local teams, whether it's the Astros or the Rangers, or let's see here. If you're a Rockies fan, right? Because I think the Rockies are the closest team on the West Side. If you're a Rockies fan, God bless you, because that's just as destitute. But
that's tough.
Yeah, that's rough too. Actually, if you're a Rockies fan, then Texas Tech baseball shouldn't affect you at all. You should be used to this.
That's right.
But the baseball team sucks, man. They're terrible. Softball is really good, and softball is there. So really, just switch on over. Rocky Johnson. Go to Rocky Johnson for you. You ain't gotta go to the Law. You can go to the Rock. Right.
That's right.
And so there's that. So Lady Raiders basketball though. So this team ended the year losing a lot of games. Right, they lost. Oh, let me count this up because I got their schedule out here. So let's see here. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So they ended up losing 14 of the last 16 games. They lost 9 in a row to end the season. Not good, Bob. Actually, no, I take it back. Not to end the season. They did win one game at the very end. It was senior night. Everybody was feeling good. It was a bad, right? Time to play a team we're supposed to lose to. And they actually did good, went out, took Colorado to the wire, and actually beat them. It was actually a really great game. It was a fun game. I ended up starting watching the game at halftime because we were winning. And I was like, we're beating Colorado? We ain't supposed to be beating Colorado right now. And so, it was actually a really fun game, and the ladies pulled it out, right? And I wish in an alternate universe, this would be a situation where I'm like, this is the game they needed to clinch their spot in the tournament, or like any type of success or semblance. Instead, it's just a really fun game on senior night, right? Bailey Maupin in the game had 20 points. Kyla Freelon, 15 points, 9 rebounds. Jazz Shavers, 14 points, 4 assists. 13 points, 9 rebounds for Jalen Bristow off the bench. 8 points for Logan Johnson. We were talking about Lady Rated recruits. Logan Johnson is another ESPN top 150 player. Like she was a 4-star athlete out of Houston, right? She hasn't really gotten too much shine this year, but or last 2 years, I should say. But that was another one, right? So the ladies did go to Kansas City to the Big 12 tournament, and they actually played really well to end the season. Right. Their first game in the Big 12 tournament was against a lowly Kansas team. We were still favored to lose. They were still higher up on them, but Texas Tech was able to win the game. Good for them. Right. We were the underdogs in this game, but it wasn't a huge shock that we won this game because Kansas also stinks. We stink a little bit more, but they do stink too. And so it's like, all right, good job, good effort. But we're about to play Utah. All right, that's going to be an L. Let's go home. And they end up beating Utah 75-64, right? And actually, this game was a little more convincing. They kind of, from the second quarter on, held serve, played really well. Bailey Maupin had one of the best games of the season, right? We were 13.5-point underdogs. A lot of bettors were really pissed about this game, right? Or ecstatic. But Tech kind of going in. And then the last game, in the quarters, playing Oklahoma State, they took Oklahoma State down to the wire. We were up by a point heading into the fourth quarter. I ranked Oklahoma State team. This is not the men's team. This is the women's team. 21st ranked against the Cowgirls, up by a point. Logan Johnson balled out, 17 points in that game. And I'm like, oh my God, are we going to win this game? Now, unfortunately, Oklahoma State made plays and rallied at the end to win the game. But the last 4 games of the season, the best this team has played all year long. And I'm sitting here like, where the hell has this been? Where the hell has this been for the last – since the season started? Where the hell has this been? And it gets us to – and I know we're already past time, but it gets us to what I was telling you before is Krista Gerlich, to me, and this coaching staff and this team, they're anomalies. I don't understand. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this. A coach that has shown she can be good. Like the first 3 years she was here, everything was progressing like it was supposed to. They made the WNIT in her third year, and it was like, oh man, we're right on track. But the last 2 seasons have been abysmal. Candy Whitaker, when she was here, was bad from day one. We didn't have to question whether she was a good coach. After year 1, I'm like, I hope she improves. She never did. She was always bad. All right. Switching sports, Cliff Kingsbury. We started the season out 7-0 in his first year because we also didn't play good teams. And we played good teams and we lost all 5 games to end the season. And from that moment on, we were like, this is Cliff King. This is as good as Cliff Kingsbury is ever going to be. Right? Matt Wells, we lost to Kansas in his first year. From the very beginning, we said this guy is not good. From what Krista Gerlich took over, the way she was able to improve her first 3 years, I'm like, she's trending the right way. So, and it's not like she's not recruiting. This is some of the best recruiting we've had. Logan Johnson was a top ESPN top 150 player. Bailey Maupin was a top ESPN top 150 player. Jack Shavers was right outside of that. That's 3 great recruits.
Yeah.
That's 3 of the best recruits Texas Tech Lady Raiders have had in a decade plus. So what? I can't explain it. I don't know. I don't get it. But all I know, Jeremy, is that there is a certain decision that's going to happen here on March 25th. And if the decision doesn't go our way, the Krista Gerlich clock begins literally that day.
Yeah.
The clock begins.
And it hurts to be reminded that we have yet to beat Oklahoma State. We cannot beat Oklahoma State to save our life. and so that yeah, it is an awkward thing to watch, and it'll be interesting to kind of digest it further. And I think we really want to wait until that decision on the 25th. But this whole like post, if Coach Gerlich does indeed getting fired and we separate ways, like it's gonna be interesting to kind of look at that experiment as a whole, because I've never seen a coach come in with not bravado, but like this essence of I believe that I can do this. I believe that we can do this, and like having a game plan, improving year after year, and then it's just like, oh, I'm done now. I'm done running. What is going on? So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah.
And if we do have a commitment go our way, it's going to be a very interesting offseason, because I cannot imagine this team will look very much the same personnel-wise. Or maybe something will change the coaching staff. I don't know.
Yeah, I would argue that if the decision goes our way, it doesn't mean that Gerlich is out of the clear. So for those that are that don't understand what we're talking about Aaliyah Chavez is deciding where she's going to school. She's the last one left when it comes to decisions. They're On3 made an expert prediction that she's going to Texas. I think a lot of people are assuming she's going to Texas. There was a tweet that said she's asking for $1.5 million and it's between Texas and Oklahoma. Her dad refuted it, was like, I don't know what the hell y'all talking about. So that's from what we know, what Jeremy and I know, Texas Tech is very much still in the mix. Very, very much still in the mix. So I wouldn't believe really anything. Nobody really knows anything when it comes to Aaliyah Chavez. I'll say that. No, anybody that says they do, even the person on 3 that predicted it, they don't know. Nobody truly knows anything about where she's going. I think most people are looking at it and saying, why the hell wouldn't she go to Texas? Which, fair. But nobody knows where the hell she's going. I will say that if Chavez doesn't come here, there's nothing that Gerlich has shown in the last 2 years that says that this is going to change whatsoever. Right? Because it's not like the talent's not there. There's nothing. So I do think that we're going to have another lowly season and then it's time to move on. Right? Because then you bring up the first 2 seasons. And the first 2 seasons, again, she took a team from an abysmal spot. But if you don't know anything about the Lady Raider program and you just look at the stats, you're going to say that she took over a team that was 17-10 the year before, and they were 10-15 her first year, 11-18 her second year. And that's without any context, without knowing anything about what she took over, anything like that. And that's all you're going to see. And all you're going to see is say she's had 1 successful year out of 5, which is kind of true, right? At the end of the day, your record is what your record is, right? She is. I mean, right now, there's only one coach in Texas Tech history that she is better than, which is Candy Whitaker, who is easily the worst coach in Texas Tech Lady Raider history. And actually, I would even argue one of the worst coaches in Texas Tech athletics history. That era was terrible. And it doesn't help that Christy Curry, who was the coach before Whitaker, is now leading Alabama to one of the greatest seasons they've ever had. So, but I say all that to say, even if we get the commitment, I still think Krista Gerlich she's not off scot-free, right? If you have a player of Aaliyah Chavez's stature, and typically, y'all know on this podcast, I'm usually not this hyperbolic when it comes to 18-year-olds committed. Chavez is different, man. You cannot have a talent like Aaliyah Chavez and still be, what's our record this year? And still be 17-17. You can't do it. You simply you can't. Yeah, you can't do it. Right, and so the pressure is on just that much more. So either way, she's not off scot-free, but I do think it at least gives her some grace because she landed the number 1 player, the highest rated player in Texas Tech athletics history. So there's that.
Facts.
Last but not least, track is really good at running. Anything else you want to say to the people?
Nope. March Madness, baby. It's gonna be a good time for the men's basketball team. It's gonna be a fun one.
It is going to be a fun one. We will be here for all the not Lady Raider basketball anymore, but men's basketball stuff. Man, I'm really excited for this offseason. 2C to be the highest that we can get to it. My quote on that is that you just got to get to the easiest path to the Sweet 16, and then from there it's a dogfight, right? But the way this team shoots, the way that we can just light it up, this team has the makings, right? Mm-hmm. And I think the next time we pod, we will have some predictions. Maybe one of us predicts a natty, maybe. But yeah, so that would be our next one. And also there is going to be there's going to be softball coverage from Tortillas and Takes. Listen, guys, I've been providing baseball coverage for the last few years. I don't know if I want to be this depressed every time I get on this episode, this podcast. Baseball is in a dismal state right now. I knew this was going to be a rough year. I don't think anybody could have predicted this bad of a year. I recently ranked all the teams, and baseball made me thought about that ranking, Jeremy, by the way. It was baseball. I saw we lost again. I'm like, you know what? If I ranked all the tech teams, where would they fall? They fell dead last, worse than the Lady Raiders. I've been talking about Lady Raiders being bad all year. And I'm like, no, Lady Raiders, at the very least, were beating up on the bad teams. Baseball's losing to everybody. So, even Kenny Rogers, national college baseball analyst, was like, this is weird. Texas Tech ain't never been this bad. Even when Texas Tech wasn't as good as they were during the Tadlock era, we've never been this bad. The biggest problem we had at Texas Tech baseball was we were just average, which was not great. But we've never just been just bad. Some people point to Tadlock's lifetime contract, which I kind of agree is a terrible thing to give anybody. But I don't think anybody's ready to fire Tadlock or anything like that. I wouldn't get crazy, but there is a certain person, and Joe was doing a baseball podcast last year, and he called him out. He's been saying he's been calling out for this person to be gone for years now. And if Tad ain't gonna do it, what does that mean? Because this is just abysmal. It's terrible. It's bad. But we will have softball coverage for sure, and we'll talk about baseball. But softball is going to be the forefront of these episodes, especially as we're trending towards one of the greatest softball seasons in Tech history, which is awesome. So yeah. With all that being said, you have been listening to this is your boy Albie and the People's Champ Jeremy Gillen, and you've been listening to Tortillas and Takes podcast, part of the 1012 network. As always, stay wrecked, people.